Hello, everybody, and welcome to ATL Falcons UK. This week, me and Cal have been joined by Andy, who's going to co-host with us and take over a little bit, seeing as I can't really speak properly today. But our guest today is Justin Felder, who is fresh off Fox Sport 5 over in America, which is a big coup for us. He's just had a little interview with the Falcons as well and stuff, so we're going to cover all the latest news, presumably a little bit about Julio, and then just see where it takes us. So, Cal, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, we'll do. First, we'll ask just a bit about yourself, basically. So how did you get into what you do? And just tell us what about yourself, really.
Yeah, well, first of all, guys, thank you so much for having me. This is really cool. I've seen a lot of friends I have that popped up on your show. I'm really glad to be here. Really cool and share some time with you guys. So my name's Justin. I work at the local Fox TV station in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been here 6 years or so. I'm originally from Florida. I've worked a bunch of different places. I worked in South Carolina. I worked in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So I covered the Packers for 5 years right before coming to Atlanta. So went to school for journalism and have been working in TV for a while. But we do a lot with the Falcons at Fox 5 at our TV station. We're actually the partner station with them. So locally and around the state, we produce the preseason games. There's one that goes out nationally, but we do the local ones, and we do a lot of extra Falcons programming. So this is going to be our second year of doing that with the team. So we do a lot of coverage with this team, and we're looking forward to an exciting year. It's interesting already.
Got that one, mate. Andy, do you want to start with your first one, what you have down?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, from what I can see today, it looked like a bit of a next man up day. We know that we should never have expected Julio to be there, even if he was still with the team. But Ridley recovering from surgery. I think I read that Russell Gage wasn't practicing. Who kind of stepped up in their absence? Did anybody impress?
You know, I didn't have a chance to be out there today. We're actually still we're doing a lot of work from home. So this is kind of the TV studio I have for the evening. So I'm going to be anchoring our evening news coming up tonight at 6 p.m. and 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. So I'm working on the shows from home today. So I didn't get a chance to be on the practice field. But one thing you did mention that was kind of interesting today was we heard from Arthur Smith this morning, and he got a bunch of questions like every different way about Calvin Ridley. Just, okay, so where is he? Is he hurt? Was he hurt? Did he have surgery? And he just kept kind of saying it, a lot like when he was talking about Julio, we're not going to talk about that right now. And he's not obligated to right now. And he reminded us if it was the season, he would have to give us an answer. And he said, it's not the season, so sorry. And then it came out from NFL Network and subsequently other places that Ridley had minor foot surgery in the offseason, so that's why we haven't seen him on the field. But it was kind of funny this morning. He was just kind of, deflecting questions from all different sides about where is Calvin Ridley. But in terms of the rest of the crew, yeah, Russell Gage is the guy is going to have, hugely increased opportunities. Also going to be interesting to see how they use the tight ends. They've got a lot of options, but Calvin Ridley is the proven one. And from there, it's going to be who steps up.
Yeah, it was a very kind of Belichickian
yes.
response from Smith, which works great when you're winning, as we've seen with Bill. Right. When you're making Super Bowls every season, people will give you the benefit of the doubt for that. But it's a results-driven business, isn't it?
It is, and you know what? They're undefeated right now. But yeah, I'll give Arthur Smith some credit. Look, he's not a guy who's so far he's not cracking a ton of smiles in these press conferences, right? But he's having fun with it. He's poking fun at the media and things like that. And ultimately, that's the NFL, right? Not a lot of guys are going to give a whole bunch more information than they had to. I mean, Dan Quinn over the last years, he's a super energetic and caffeine Red Bull, catchphrases. But he never, divulged a ton of information. He just said these same answers, just really high octane, But that's kind of the NFL way right now is they aren't going to say any more than they have to. And this time of year, they don't have to say much.
Absolutely. We did mention in regards to Smith that earlier on in his first press conferences, he looked a little bit shell-shocked by it all, just a little bit daunted. Obviously, first time being a coach and everything like that, so it's a lot to take on board. But he does seem to be loosening up a little bit, and he's finding his groove a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think he's just all about the football. Whereas Dan Quinn, like you just mentioned, is a little bit of a showman as well. Like, he had a bit of glitz and glamour about him and just liked being the star. I think Arthur Smith is there to go, get on the field, play ball, and then that's his job done. Like, he's not too bothered about the rest of it.
Yeah, and it's a tough setup too. I mean, doing everything over Zoom, right? Like, he's doing his introductory press conference sitting in an empty room in front of a laptop, and he doesn't even get to do the thing where you stand up and hold the jersey and Arthur Blank puts his arm around you. So he didn't get kind of all that stuff. So I'll give him a pass on that. But you're right. He's not a guy who's, going to be, cracking jokes and all that all the time. But like you said, neither is Bill Belichick, and whatever works for you, works for you. But then again, you have, the totally other side of it in the NFL as well. You have John Gruden, you have Bruce Arians, who just won a Super Bowl, who is, very, tons of personality comes through in these interviews. But you're right. It's the results, and fans will love that style if he wins a lot. And if he doesn't, they might not be as crazy about him not giving a lot of information.
Yeah.
One of the best comments was it yesterday's about, obviously we'll get onto Julio in a minute, but the comment when he went, "I don't worry about players I've never coached," and I thought that is probably the perfect line. I think that's what fans want to hear, and we retweeted out and thought that's great. That was like, this is a great attitude to have. I think that was point blank done.
Right. And I mean, he ultimately, and Terry Fontenot didn't create this salary cap situation, right? And Julio Jones, even if he came to them or their regime with a trade request, and we can get into all of that, they just got here. So it kind of is a tough situation to arrive, and they're building something and starting something, and 9 out of 10 questions are about Julio Jones, right? But hey, it's a future Hall of Famer and one of the best players in franchise history, and that's, it's not. We're sorry, but those are the questions that people want to know the answers to. But they handled it how they handled it, and it wasn't something clearly that he wanted to dwell on or spend a lot of time on.
Just out of curiosity, what's your take on the whole Julio scenario? Because, of course, we are hurt by it and everything, and the way that it came about obviously wouldn't have been the way that he would have wanted it to, I don't think, after all these years. But it's happened now, so everybody's got... I think there's a lot of bitter fans out there still at the moment just because of how it's happened. Not about him personally as such, just as in the way that it was divulged to us. But like you said, he's a future Hall of Famer and one of the greatest players to ever wear the jersey. So we can't criticize too much.
Yeah, and Danny, I think you hit it on the head. I don't think we have any reason to believe that that's what Julio wanted, was kind of the Fox Sports 1 Shannon Sharp, Skip Bayless thing. I'm going to be interested. Hopefully somebody in the Tennessee media asks him, "Hey, man, did you know you were on TV?" Right? Because there's been reported that he didn't, right? But we have not heard that directly from Julio. But he's had these contract things before where he's wanted an extension and a restructure, and it's never, ever come out. He's never said that. He's always been the loyal soldier. So let's imagine a world where that didn't happen, right? Where Shannon Sharp didn't call Julio and put him on speakerphone. If it didn't happen and he gets traded to Tennessee, then for all any of us know, it was a salary cap move, and everybody kind of feels great. It's like, well, okay, the Falcons are making a tough decision, and Julio gets a chance to win. Kind of everybody's happy. It was that one thing where it kind of comes out on speakerphone that I'd like to know more about. And we'll see. Maybe Julio, Shannon Sharp's his friend. Maybe he's not going to throw him under the bus. Yeah. We'll give him a chance. But I think, it kind of is. Tennessee's GM called it a win-win. Like, the Falcons had to make tough choices. They knew that a guy who's been loyal, played through pain, been so good and productive over 10 years, he wanted a fresh start. They gave it to him. So I think it kind of worked for all sides, especially, the Falcons had to make some tough salary cap moves. It might have been Matt Ryan. It might have been Grady Jarrett. It had to be something, So it makes sense. It's no fun. I understand a lot of people who own number 11 jerseys are bummed, but something like that was going to happen.
My favorite jersey I've got is a Julio one, and I actually love it. It's like the best shirt. It's a different kind of jersey, and I thought it fits great. And then as soon as it happened, I was just like, no. I actually wore it tonight. I played badminton with my dad, and I wore it. Even my dad made a comment. I was just like, oh God, it's starting already.
Yeah, but you know what? Guys change teams, and it's part of the NFL. We've seen it so much where, prolific players will end their careers somewhere else. I mean, you think of, Brett Favre and guys like that. There's so many around the Emmitt Smith. You think of so many guys around the league that I think if one day Julio Jones is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I think Falcons fans will be, embracing that. And I think he's certainly got a case. But I think there will be a making up there, certainly, if there are any hard feelings now.
And you know what? Give it a year or two.
Oh yeah,
those jerseys, people will be back wearing them.
Oh yeah,
all it makes it.
People wear. You go to Falcons games now. People wear Deion Sanders jerseys.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go on, Andy. You can move on to your next one if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of piggybacks off that a little bit. Obviously, the Falcons this off-season and into pre-season with Julio leaving, with Alex Mack leaving, Ricardo Allen, Keanu Neal. That's a lot of experience heading out the door. It's a new regime. A lot of those things are kind of always going to happen. My question is kind of, is there anybody in particular who you think is likely to step up into that leadership role? I know that Matt Ryan's still there. I know Jake Matthews is still there, Deion Jones, but there is a void of players who were previously the leaders in the team who are now no longer there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be different guys in different groups. And you're right. You still do have Matt Ryan. You still do have a guy who's a former MVP on offense that, is playing the most important position. So you're not going to be lacking a voice on offense. We'll see if Calvin Ridley kind of steps into that role. He is very much a lead by example type guy. But to be fair, I think that's a description that a lot of people would have of Julio Jones as well. And he was a successful leader in that way. You mentioned Jake Matthews, and we had a chance to hear from him one of the earlier OTAs, and he said, you know what, he feels himself kind of growing into that role because you had Alex Mack, one of the best centers of a generation there. Jake Matthews said, yeah, early in my career, it was just kind of the tackles. And then I'd feel comfortable speaking up to the guys on the left side. And now I think it's kind of on me, is what Jake said, to speak up to everybody on the offensive line and really on the offense. You also have Mike Davis, a veteran at running back, who kind of comes in with the experience, with the resume, that kind of has that presence around him. On the defensive side of the ball, you have Deion Jones. I wouldn't forget about Foye Oluokun, who's coming off a great year, and a guy that we heard from a ton, a guy who is, isn't afraid to be vocal, is super well-spoken out in the media. We see him all the time. And you also have, Grady Jarrett on the defensive line. So you have guys who can be those vocal leaders. But you're right, there are roles to fill in the leadership side and also in the production side all over the field.
Absolutely.
And I think Mike Davis is already starting to say the right things, isn't he? You see him on Twitter. He's watching all of the Hawks games. He's going to these. He's fighting people. He's doing everything that he's already become a part of Falcons Twitter.
Yeah, we went out to our photographer went out. He had a camp for kids playing football over the weekend. He posted it online yesterday, and our photographer asked him about the Hawks, and he's reeling off the whole starting five and giving us a breakdown and all things like that. And look, he's new to this team, but he's got the phrase in baseball they always say is he's got, the back of the baseball card, right? He's got years under his belt, and he is a local guy. He went to Stevenson High School in Stone Mountain, which is just outside of Atlanta. So he knows this city. People know him well, and he's got the experience. I mean, you look around, even in past years of the Falcons, look what Dwight Freeney did for the defensive line in the Super Bowl year. Obviously, different levels of production with Dwight Freeney and Mike Davis, but I think established veterans coming in can have that freedom to speak up from day one, and I think he's going to be one of those guys. And he's your starter right now, and going into the season, he will be.
Yeah,
I think he's an instant fan favorite because of what he's saying on Twitter as well, and I think that's great. I think some players are quite quiet, which is fine. But someone like him, we scroll through Twitter and it's like it just keep popping up his name. But it's great to see, and he obviously loves the city. So I think with Smith and a new regime, what it's going to be, I think he'll be putting up some decent numbers this year.
Yeah, he's having fun with it for sure. And hey, he's going to get a chance as well to kind of be the guy, which he's had chances to do in his career, but he's coming from a place where he was kind of in, a complimentary role. That's what he's mostly done. And we'll see how, they use running backs, and if they get creative with Cordero Patterson, we'll see what they do. We don't know. They kind of have the element of surprise, right? Arthur Smith can do whatever he wants. But he's going to have the chance to, it seems, be the lead running back, which is an opportunity for him to show that, he's got what it takes to do that and be the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Just coming off the back of that, have you got anyone else that you think will step up heavily this year? I know we've already discussed in terms of mentality and everything, but production-wise, is there anyone that's standing out for you on either side of the game?
Yeah, I think on offense, I'm really interested to see what Russell Gage does in this expanded role. I mean, we saw Calvin Ridley last year in games without Julio continue to produce, but if Russell Gage gets 16 weeks of really being that number 2 wide receiver, what's he going to be able to do? And he's going to have a lot of opportunities, right? There's going to be a ton of focus on Calvin Ridley. There's going to be a lot of focus on the tight ends with Kyle Pitts and Hayden Hurst. So you got to figure Russell Gage is going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities simply because of everyone else out there. I'm also looking, for the offensive line, who's going to come in and win that center job, right? Matt Hennessy is kind of the odds-on favorite right now, replacing Alex Mack because he has the experience, but it's a new scheme for anyone. You have Drew Dahlman, the rookie coming in out of Stanford, who's going to come in and win that job. And that's a really big position. I mean, whoever wins the job is going to have to do really well. I mean, Matt Ryan's gotten hit a lot over the past couple of years. And the guy on defense, I think a lot of people are talking about him for good reason because he had a good rookie year, is AJ Terrell. What kind of steps can he take? Because he was thrown into the fire last year. He's, against Michael Thomas and all these major guys, made a lot of good plays, had some he probably would like back, but can he take a big step forward and kind of become a, not necessarily a dominant cornerback, right? But a really established guy? Can he be somebody you don't worry about out there? And that would be big. It's something, the Falcons haven't had for a few minutes since Desmond Trufant, and really was that for a while. Robert Alford had his moments, but also was fairly reliable for the most part. But can AJ Terrell kind of take that opportunity and run?
Yeah. To be on from a personal note, I'd be very shocked if he didn't, because he overperformed, I'd say, for people who set their expectations pretty low last year, because although he was the position that we needed last year in the draft, and he wasn't the name that a lot of people were touting for. So I think that added a lot of pressure onto his back, because he was probably the 3rd or 4th choice that people wanted, not even up there at the very top. So I think from the criticism that he took early on to what he ended up performing like, I'd hats off to him, because can't have expected too much more.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a lot of people got on, the last front office, Thomas Dimitroff, for problems they had in the draft. But a couple of the guys we just talked about, AJ Terrell, you're right. Everyone was predicting all those other cornerbacks to go before him. Maybe he ends up having been the right pick. We'll see. We need some years to decide that. Russell Gage is another one. A mid-round, a late-round guy. If you can get a mid to late round pick to be your established number 2 wide receiver, that's a win. Foye Oluokun, another one, that we're seeing these guys develop. Now it's on the current staff to develop those guys and get them to that next level.
Yeah. Just one actually, and I'll let the other guys take over, because that's just hit me then. As we're talking about sort of middle of the park picks, any takes on Frank Darby yet?
I knew he was going to ask that.
I couldn't hold back on that one. He seems so upbeat, and I love it.
I know. I want to hang out with him. I want to like him to do press conferences every week. I think it's really too early to make any judgments on these guys. There's no pads. They're in shirts and shorts right now. I think he was a guy that you look at as a deep threat coming out of college. Maybe somebody who with more opportunity can produce a little bit more at the NFL level. And look, beyond Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage, there are some opportunities there. You got guys coming back with experience. Olamide Zaccheaus, a speedster. They have some different body types and different skill sets there at wide receiver. But hey, look, it's the NFL. They're going to play with 3 wide receivers or 4 a lot of the time. You got Christian Blake, who's been pretty good in his opportunities. So those are going to be, reps and snaps available to be won. And if he can come in and earn them, he's going to have that chance. But it's also, going to be special teams with these guys, especially when you're coming down to roster decisions. And some of those, other wide receivers I mentioned have established themselves as having special teams roles as well. So that's going to be a big thing for Frank Darby is, can he find a home, on kickoff cover, right? Can he make himself indispensable there? Because then you're active on game day and you can get in the game. If you can't earn that special teams role, you better be real good as a wide receiver, especially a young guy.
Absolutely. Just got one comment I'll bring up, and then I'll let Cal and Andy take back over. It's a question for yourself, really, Justin. I mean, it's a bold statement, but does Mike Davis, with his size, become Atlanta's Derrick Henry?
I think everyone will say no one's ever going to become Derrick Henry. I think it's just if he comes like a portion of Derrick Henry, I think everyone would be excited. That's
right.
my take.
Nowhere to go, but I mean, it was a struggle last year, right? Running the ball, whoever it was. I mean, Todd Gurley had some games and was more effective in the red zone. Remember, that was the story 2 years ago, was they couldn't punch it in, inside the 20-yard line. They got a little better at that last year. So I think Derrick Henry might be too high of a bar, but can he be effective? Can you be somebody who's looking at 800-900 yards? I mean, 1,000 yards would be a lot, figuring that they are going to probably work in some of the younger guys. We'll see what they do with Cordero Patterson, who I understand was working out with the running backs today at minicamp practice. But again, I've been working on stuff from home and didn't see that with my own two eyes. But we'll see. But I think he can be effective. And yeah, they need a better running game. That's not shocking analysis from anybody.
Andy, have you got any more? Well, I think
absolutely. So just something you mentioned earlier, Justin, actually, when you were talking about the centre battle between Matt Hennessy and Drew Zolman. How do you see both that and next to them at left guard playing out? I saw that Josh Andrews was kind of given one of the first shots with the starters a few days back, might have been last week, but obviously his background has been very much as a backup throughout the league. He's kind of moved around the place and he's just come in when absolutely necessary. So I think most Falcons fans are probably hoping that one of the younger guys wins it, whoever that ends up being, whether that's Mayfield or Matt Gunner. Obviously got some opportunities last season. How do you see that playing out, or do you think it's just too early to tell at the moment?
I'll say, first of all, I do think it's probably too early to tell. It's just, I think if you ask the coaches or even the players, to kind of evaluate things at this time, and they'll all kind of say, it's not real football yet. They're not wearing pads, they're not hitting, and that's just the time of year. But we, on the outside, as fans and media, we love doing this stuff. So, we can absolutely continue speculating. But I think until you see it happen live on a practice field, and the nice benefit, in addition to preseason games this year, is we found out yesterday they'll have the joint practices with the Dolphins. So we'll have an extra, I don't know, probably 2 days worth is just my guess of seeing these guys in live or live-ish reps against the different colored jerseys. So that'll be nice. I think if I had to guess right now, you'd probably assume that the veterans have the upper hand just because they're veterans. I mean, you remember a couple of years ago, thrusting Caleb McGarry in to start really early on. It's really tough. The NFL is really tough. These guys are bigger, faster, stronger. And if you put somebody in, week one or early in the season who's not ready yet, you're going to get Matt Ryan hurt. So I think that's why I would give the edge to the veterans unless they are outplayed. So that's the way I'd see it right now. But we don't even have a ton of tape or experience watching Matt Hennessy at center. I mean, Alex Mack was such a mainstay. We got a little bit last year, but those are certainly going to be interesting positions to watch. But you got to think, on an offensive line where you've got 3 first-round picks and a couple more potential, high and mid-round picks and rookies coming in, you have to feel like the onus is on an offensive guy and Arthur Smith to be able to find a unit that works. But also reason to be excited and optimistic about the progress that Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry will make in I guess it'll be year 3 now for those guys.
as somebody who watched the Falcons against the Dolphins multiple times in the Mike Smith era, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. The prospect of them going up against each other for days at a time. Like the number of panic signings that came off the back of, it was Shelby, wasn't it? Who Derrick Shelby completely tore somebody apart, and I think was that what prompted Andy Levitro being signed? I can't remember.
I don't remember the exact sequence, but Levitro was the Super Bowl year he got signed, right, or early in it, or the year before. I don't remember the exact timeline, but I hear you. Hopefully no injuries, and that'll take it easy on each other. But I'm looking forward to seeing joint practices. I don't think it hasn't happened for the Falcons since I've been here. This will be my 6th season. I don't think it has. No, I don't think it has. So I've never been to a joint training camp practice. It didn't happen when I was covering the Packers either, in Green Bay. So that'll be cool to see.
No, I can't remember the last time actually. They definitely did for the Hard Knocks year, didn't they?
I was going to say the Hard Knocks season. Yeah,
they had the Texans there because I was just praying for Mike Smith to have a word in JJ Watt's ear, and right. Sadly, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I think you're right though. I think maybe somebody can correct me, but I think that was the last one. It seems like it's happening more around the NFL now, but hey, it's not my decision if they're going to do it or not, but it should be cool.
I've never heard, obviously we're quite new, but I've never, think me and Danny was like, when we first seen it, was like, is that normal? Is that what we do? Is that what we do in the NFL? But if it works, it works.
I'm not super well versed on the history of it, but I feel like it's come back more in past years. I think it used to happen more often in years past before kind of the secrecy, went up and up and up and up in the NFL. But I feel like you're seeing it more and more now. And for teams that want to get, additional evaluation time, if you have a young team and you want to see your guys in live reps and just get that extra bit of information and evaluation, it makes sense. There is, I would think, a little bit higher risk of injury. You're not kind of looking out for your guys as much. But hey, training camp, it's contact, or it's up to the coaches how much contact there is. So that's a big decision that Arthur Smith and company are going to be making. That it doesn't get kind of the headlines of who's going to start or who are you going to draft, but it's how do you do things? Are you doing full contact? Are you tackling to the ground? And then in week 8, if tackling is good or if it's not good, do you come back to how they did training camp, right? Because once you get into the season, you're very limited on how much contact you can have. But if you do contact in training camp, that increases the chances of injury.
Yeah.
Well, by the time we play them, sorry, Andy. Go on.
I was just going to say, there's going to be highlights as well from it. Anytime you've got two teams going up against each other for however many hours a day, like thinking back, there was DeAndre Hopkins and D'Angelo Hall, wasn't there? When they were drawing for 5 minutes or so, and then Hopkins ran around, and I think I can't remember if it tore Hall's ACL or something like that, didn't it? And you always get fights. You always get.
You're in Miami. It's going to be 1,000 degrees, in the heat in the middle of the day, and then they got to play a game. So yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet that some tempers will run high.
By the time we play them in mid-season, I think both teams. I don't think they'll be giving too much away in the next couple of weeks anyway. Right, we'll be playing them in pre-season as well, I think, and in the main season. So I think it'd be more probably trying to false each other, but like, this is the way we're going to do it.
Yeah, and it's you still get that value of just the one-on-one stuff, and just offensive line, defensive line, those kind of things. You get that value, but you're right. You're not going to be opening up the playbook too wide at practice or in any preseason game.
Yeah. We just got another question in the comments in regards to free agency. Where do you think Atlanta need to look in free agency following Julio's trade and all the space that'll free up for us?
Well, the first thing is they got to sign their draft picks, right? They didn't have the money to do that. And unless I missed it while we've been talking, I don't think they've done it yet. So you're going to need to spend that money, and you need to keep a little bit in reserves in case there are any moves made during the season. We'll see if there are any kind of moves. There's no reason to expect anything flashy, though. What you're looking for is depth. But one thing to look out for, especially during training camp, is you might have a team that's more active than usual on the waiver wire. You know, if there's a team that's got 5 really good guards and they have to cut one of them, or somebody who's young and maybe just not ready, maybe Terry Fontenot looks for that guy. The pro personnel department might be really busy, and the Falcons will have some waiver priority because they, you know, had the record that they did last year. So I think training camp might have a little extra level of interest this year because they could be more active on the waiver wire than they have been in years past. But with the money freed up, no, I would not look for them to go, you know, do anything extravagant. But you're also at a point right now where there's going to be a whole new group of players that are going to be needing extensions. Calvin Ridley is going to be needing an extension in the very near future. So those are some decisions. Grady Jarrett is going to be in line for an extension. Those are things that I think you could see more easily done now rather than going out and making a splash.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point you made about the waivers, actually, because thinking back to the draft, the Falcons really didn't have those kind of late round picks that that normally most teams do. So there's a very real possibility. Was Darby the last player who was drafted? So
yeah, I think so.
There's a very real possibility that between Darby and I can't remember it was one of the running backs that got given the most guaranteed money in the undrafted class, wasn't it? But between that, there's probably a decent number of players who fell between those guys in their rankings when they were putting out their draft board. So the fact that they weren't able to pick any of those guys because they didn't have those picks, I think, there's a very real possibility that somebody is waived to they have a reasonable grade, had a draftable grade on.
Sure, or younger veterans. I mean, they could be first, second year players that are released from other teams. And look, you know, the Falcons have holes to fill. You know, it's a team that still has high ambitions and high expectations for themselves, but there are opportunities. Let's not kid ourselves here. So if they see somebody that they feel like they can bring in and develop on the waiver wire, I'd keep an eye out for that this year. Hey, maybe you were looking at running back. Maybe it's somebody who is, you know, first or second year. Maybe it's a kind of third down back type guy. If Mike Davis is really your hammer, short yardage, early downs guy, there are some opportunities there, and we'll have to see who's out there and what kind of moves want to be made. But I think that's an area that the Falcons can certainly be active in this year.
Without a doubt. Cal, have you got anything next up, or should we leave it to Andy?
I've got a bit about the draft. I think obviously we drafted Pitts in the first round, which I think a lot of the fan base were very happy with, which was positivity, which is a good start anyway. But would you, because with the rumours out with Julio saying that he wanted to leave at the start of the year, basically, which is fine. He wanted to leave, but it's only just came out. Do you think that then changed what he was going to do in the draft?
I think
with the first pick especially.
Yeah, I think the thing that really changed it might have been what the 49ers did. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of talk that the Falcons were higher on Trey Lance, maybe than Justin Fields. Not that Justin Fields they were low on necessarily, but there's been, you know, reporting out there that was the quarterback that they thought was next, kind of after Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. So I think that's an interesting what if the 49ers, you know, they were tied to Mac Jones for so long and everybody thought that was going to happen and all the rumors and stuff, and they ultimately take Trey Lance. I don't have a good answer for you of what they would have done if Trey Lance was on the board, but maybe things would have been different. Maybe that would have been the heir apparent. But it sounds like once he came off the board, the decision was easy. And Terry Fontenot's really said from day one, he's the best player available guy, right? And that's a school of thought that's worked for teams like the Ravens and the Packers over the years and the Steelers, that no matter what they have on their roster, we're going to take the best guy, right? You figure the Falcons were going to show up at camp with a former first-round pick and Hayden Hurst at tight end. You feel pretty good about that. But they thought Kyle Pitts, if he's clearly the most talented, highest ceiling guy, that's who they went for. So I don't think the Julio Jones situation necessarily impacted that, but I don't know that we're ever going to get a straight answer, right? Terry Fontenot's never going to say, "Oh yeah, we would have taken that guy in San Francisco." No, that's never ever going to happen. But it's an interesting hypothetical.
Definitely.
Go on, Andy.
Just the last one from me is kind of one of the talking points in the last few weeks. Really, has been about the the past regimes players, basically guys who were drafted by Thomas Dimitrov, drafted by Dan Quinn, and are now having to find a new role on this team. Guys like Marlon Davidson, Deidre Senat, Kendall Sheffield, Quadri Ellison. Do you think all of them are kind of still have roles in the team, or is it kind of a case where they are really starting from scratch at the same position as everybody else, and if they don't have a good preseason, then the writing could be on the wall?
Oh, it's a very good question, and I think it probably is the case with a new regime that you don't feel the pressure of, hey, we took this guy in the second round, we've got to find a way to get him on the field. But in fairness, the last coaching staff here wasn't necessarily putting a lot of those guys on the field all that much. Maybe you have a guy in Dean Pease at defensive coordinator, especially with these defensive linemen, that think of different ways to get them integrated. And again, I think the really big question is how's this team going to get to the quarterback, get pressure on the quarterback? Can you find a way to get Marlon Davidson out there who has that pass rush interior ability, give Grady Jarrett some support? But yeah, I think it's a very fair question. And we gave Thomas Dimitrov and Dan Quinn credit for guys like Foye and AJ Terrell and Russell Gage. There are still some question marks out there. Hey, you have Keanu Neal, who is now playing linebacker with the Dallas Cowboys. That doesn't necessarily mean he was a bad pick. Maybe he's going to come out and be a Pro Bowl linebacker. But yeah, I think with a new regime, they probably don't feel a whole ton of pressure to, hey, we've got to use this guy. We spent a high round pick on him. I think it probably is more of a case of everyone being on the same playing field. But once we get into camp, the pads will come on, and we'll see if they aren't performing. Yeah, it might not be. The time may be short, but they'll have opportunities for sure. Everyone's got that chance to prove themselves anew, good or bad.
Are you going to speak, Andy?
No, you go ahead.
No, the interview. The interview you just done, which two players was it again? Was it Murray?
We talked to Fabian Moreau and Michael Walker this morning or this afternoon were the two players. So right now, like in a normal mini camp, which nothing's normal now, you'd kind of be in the locker room and everybody can, talk to somebody, or maybe they'll have Matt Ryan at a press conference and then you can kind of talk to players as they come in. That's kind of the regular world. Right now, they just have here's who's talking on this day at this time on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So Michael Walker, interesting guy, really was thrown into the fire, I believe 4th round pick. Don't get mad if I'm wrong on that. But was real productive last year, was a special teams guy, ended up making, I looked this morning, 6 starts last year and was pretty productive at linebacker. So, hey, there's another guy playing inside linebacker, learning from Deion Jones. He talked about how much he's leaning on him. But yeah, it's interesting to hear from Michael Walker and Fabian Moreau. So that they have guys like him, like Eric Harris, that kind of in the same boat as Mike Davis, right? Veterans who maybe haven't had the opportunity to be the guy, but cornerback, come in and win the job. He's got that experience. We'll see if he can make the most of it.
Yeah, I would like to see a few of these veterans take their opportunity. Like you said, a lot of them have played second fiddle throughout their careers, not necessarily constantly, but for large chunks of it. So starting again in a very disrupted Atlanta, really, in terms of a lot of outgoings, new regime and everything. It's an even fight for everyone, whether you were a rookie or you've had 10 years in the NFL. So I would like to see a few of them win the battles and then just a few rookies in there for the mixture.
Yeah, and Brandon Copeland, another one on defense who's going to have a chance. And look, like the salary cap situation was what it was. The Falcons were not going to go out and sign a mega high-priced free agent. They didn't have the money to do it. So you have to be smarter. You have to find those guys that are undervalued, and that was the challenge for Terry Fontenot. And we'll see. And you're right. If a couple of those guys you hit on and then they become productive here, and hey, for the sake of their careers, they kind of could get a second, breath of life in their career. That's kind of the path to immediate success. Is they kind of need to be smarter. They need to find value in guys that weren't going to come with the ginormous price tags.
Yeah. Go on, Andy.
I was going to say, and I think along those lines, if you are one of those players who's looking to come and prove themselves, you look at Arthur Smith, you look at Dean Pease, you can't really ask for better situations. If you are going to be taking a step into a starting role or a more prominent role than you have previously had, both of those guys are among the best at what they do. Both that you've got Pease, who's been one of the defensive coordinators for decades now, and Arthur Smith, who you can say what you like about a lot of the time the offense went through Derrick Henry. You saw big leaps in the Titans offense in the 2 years that he was the coordinator there. And there's a reason why every team who was hiring wanted to speak to Arthur Smith.
Yeah. And Andy, I mean, it kind of goes back to what you were saying with the young guys, right? It's kind of a clean slate for everybody. I don't think, this coaching staff probably doesn't come in with attachments to anybody, right? It's going to really be who can earn those jobs, who can win the trust, who can learn the playbook and learn the technology and just be terminology is the word I was looking for. Who can work the iPad the best? No. Who can come in and execute and avoid those mental errors? Who can step up in leadership role? Who can earn spots on special teams, even if you're a veteran? It's not just the rookies. So the clean slate kind of applies to everybody, and that can be a real good thing for a team, is to have everybody know, hey, nobody, unless your name is Matt Ryan, really your spot is guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, Matt Ryan has no serious competition this year. It might have been different if the draft fell a little bit differently, but I will not complain with that. We are all very pro Matt Ryan, thankfully, so I'm fine.
AJ McCarron shade, not what I was expecting today.
I've got one last question before Danny ends it with about the season, basically. About Duron Harmon. Obviously, he's a vet, but I think it's a very good pickup for a very experienced vet. But I think in Dean Pease's defense, I think he could be a standout player.
Yeah, I think and Eric Harris kind of the same boat. These experienced safeties. I think if you're going to have young guys underneath, that's an area that you really want to have, even if you don't have a young high flying superstar safety who's going to make a whole ton of plays. It might be in your benefit to have somebody back there who is going to be a reliable last line of defense, right? Just in case something gets wrong, just in case there's a missed tackle. And really, again, we mentioned him earlier, you had that in Ricardo Allen, but that was another one of those tough salary cap decisions. I don't think if the salary cap was a different situation, I don't think you would have been getting rid of a guy like that who was a team captain and, so reliable and so smart and so much of a leader, a voice on defense. But I think that's a good spot, getting everybody lined up, kind of having the view of the entire field, where it does benefit a young defense to have some experience on the back line. So you have Duron Harmon, you have Eric Harris, some veterans there, if that's the direction they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to wrap it up with one more question, but we got a brilliant comment just before I finish that. So it's Felipe Franks is about to sling some hot dogs 50 yards down the field. Honestly, I hope that's the case, because I like the look of the guy. I know he's very raw, but I wouldn't mind having someone like that sit in the practice squad for a bit and then see what he can become. But
I was surprised he didn't get drafted. I went to the University of Florida, so he started his college career there. And I was a big Felipe Franks there, and then he broke his leg. I think he broke his leg, and then ended up transferring. But I was a lot of Gators fans, college football fans, still rooted for Felipe Franks because of what he did. He was a huge recruit out of high school. He's got a gigantic arm. I was surprised that nobody took a late round flyer on him just because of the athletic talent. But look, you have AJ McCarron, who's you're probably going to feel a lot safer as your backup quarterback. But you got the expanded practice squad this year. A practice squad spot would be his to lose. You'd got to think they're going to at least definitely want to have 3 guys in camp. But again, hey, maybe that's an area they watch the waiver wire if they don't like what Felipe Franks is doing in camp. But yeah, that's an interesting one. Giant arm, lot of potential there.
It'd be good to see him in the preseason. Obviously, I think we have 3 games this year, so I'm pretty sure they'll play him in at least half game with maybe the other guy as well. But it'd be me and Danny will be staying up for a couple of them just to watch him.
We're still hurting from the Kurt Benkert release.
I know. He seems like he's doing well in Green Bay.
He does.
I follow a bunch of Packers media folks because I used to work up there, and everybody's saying, "Hey, this Kurt Bankert guy is pretty good," and Fortnite too. He's still dominating.
Popular guy.
Very. But yeah, I'm rooting for him for sure. And hey, they have their own quarterback situation. Their offseason drama is going a lot differently than Julio.
Oh God, it is. Yeah, I mean, at least ours was done and out of the way before we could even blink. Theirs is tugging along, and I think it's going to be another couple of weeks at least. Yet still, it doesn't seem like
more. Yeah.
So that's going to be a good one. Finishing off. Go on, Andy.
Just quickly, Justin, I need some assurances from you. I need a promise we're not going to have Grady Jarrett contract drama in a year's time. I need it.
I would think that he will be a high priority guy along with Calvin Ridley. I mean, what he does, what he means to this city, and I'm sure you guys have seen it because we tweet it out every time. We always ask Grady about it, and what's his response been? Like, you know as much as I do. Call my agent if you want to know about it. So Grady is tired of talking about this, but I'd be surprised if you were to let a guy like that hit free agency with what his production and what he means to the city. But hey, they're in a tight spot. Nothing is easy financially for the Falcons right now. It's taken a lot of untangling.
Yeah.
But the only benefit is the cap space, at least next year, is so-called going up quite a bit with the new deal they've made a couple of weeks ago. But we'll wait till that's confirmed next year. But an exciting season ahead, definitely.
Calvin Ridley's going to take all of that cap space on his own, so I don't know.
He's going to get a lot of it.
Huge contract. But yeah, we won't keep you for too much longer. So our last question, and this is so early to be asking you, but any expectations for the season? I'm not going to ask you for a wins and losses, but do you want us to hit playoffs? Are you expecting that? Are we?
The thing that I kind of go back to on that is I'm pretty sure this was after Dan Quinn and Tom Dimitroff were let go. Arthur Blank spoke to the media, and what he said was he felt like the team was better than its record, but he said he thought they were, a 7-9 or an 8-8 team, right? Yeah. So I think it's reasonable, and I think the expectation would be, especially from those highest levels, improvement. I think expecting playoffs would be an awful lot, but hey, it's the NFL. Teams go from worst to first every year, and the one thing about the Falcons is they should score points, right? They've gotten talent on offense. You score points, you should be in or have the chance to be in most games. There's an awful lot of questions on defense and a lot of guys to replace from a defense that had struggles. I mean, it is what it is. I think if they take steps in the right direction, if they increase the win total by 2 or 3, and remember they have an extra game to do it this year, so it should be doable. But if they do that, if they start stepping in the right direction, these young guys make progress, I think you've got to feel real good, even if it's another year without the playoffs. So I wouldn't rule them out. It's the NFL. Yeah. Crazier things have happened. But I think progress is what they're looking for. And I think it's attainable to be, to finish the year with 7 or 8 wins. And I think if you're a Falcons fan, it might not be totally satisfying, but you should feel good about it. But long way between now and then.
Indeed. And the division is looking a little bit different this year. Of course, the Bucs haven't changed at all. They've managed to retain everyone, so ignore them. But it's a new look Saints team, and the Panthers were better than anticipated last year, actually. So I think they'll probably take another step up towards it. So it's going to be ultra competitive again, I'd imagine. So we'll see how it all pans out.
Absolutely. It'll be fun.
It should be. It should be. On that note, we're going to call it a night because we've already kept you a lot longer than we anticipated. But I love it when we just get talking. Thank you, everyone, for watching live. Justin will say bye to you separately just off the show in a minute when I end it, just so you don't vanish. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for all of your comments and everything along those lines. We should be back next week, but we do not know who our guest is yet, so you have to stay tuned for that one. But we'll be back then. So see you all soon, and thank you for watching.
Thanks, everyone.